So his wife wants to move across the country for a job that pays a third of what he makes, and she expects him to either abandon his entire medical practice or pay for two separate households. Wait, what? This is a neurologist who runs his own MS center, treats Medicaid patients nobody else will see, and has two young kids. And here's the thing. Her suggestion gets way more complicated than you'd ever expect. Okay, so here's where it gets tricky. The wife, she's been staying at home, not working currently, gets this job offer out of nowhere, across the country. And not just a regular job, one that comes with frequent travel. Her first suggestion, the whole family packs up and moves just like that. But here's the thing, the husband, he's a neurologist, runs his own practice, specializes in MS, multiple sclerosis. And not only that, he's the director of an MS center and a neurology residency program at a state hospital. I mean, listen to this. A lot of his patients are on Medicaid. And in his area, not many other doctors take Medicaid at the rates he does. So these patients, they kind of depend on him. And the state she wants to move to, it's not in the Interstate Medical Licensure Compact. That's the IMLC if you haven't heard of it. Basically, it's an agreement between states that makes transferring a medical license way easier. This state, not part of it. So transferring his license isn't simple. It's not even just complicated. It's a genuine nightmare of paperwork and time. Meanwhile, she would earn less than half of what he makes. Actually, later we find out it's more like a third. So the family's income would drop drastically. And there's the kids, 5 and 8 years old. They have their friends, their schools, their whole lives where they are. The husband's practice is established. He's respected. He's got research going. He's trying to open an infusion center that takes every insurance because the current centers turn away patients whose insurance pays too little. This is not a guy who can just pack up and leave. She suggests moving anyway. He says, look, if you take the job, you need to help with child care expenses. Because his hours are nuts, mandated hospital shifts, sometimes overnight. They'd need a nanny. And she pushes back, says that's unfair because she'd also have to cover her own living expenses in the new city. Wait, let me rewind. She also suggested something else. She said, okay, how about I take the kids, you stay here, and you cover child care and expenses from where you are. Because she claims child care and cost of living are cheaper there, but not cheap enough for her salary to support him being a stay-at-home dad. So let me process that out loud. She wants to move across the country with their two young kids. He stays behind running his practice. He pays for everything, and she, lives separately with the children on a salary that's a third of his, and travels frequently for work, so she wouldn't even be there half the time. I mean, that's not a family plan. That's a custody agreement waiting to happen. And here's another layer. He says, look, I'm not against her working at all. He'd love for her to find something local. Part-time, full-time, doesn't matter. But moving to a different state for a job that pays so much less, with no relocation bonus, that requires uprooting everyone and everything. The community actually points something out that's kind of chilling. One comment says it's concerning that she suggested living in different parts of the country. And then they say something really dark. If she moves with the kids and then files for divorce, he might have to give up his practice and move to where she is if he wants to see his children. Because custody laws, they tend to favor keeping kids in their established home. So if she establishes that home across the country before filing, yeah, you see where that's going. Now, to be fair, another comment says maybe she's just tired of being home. Maybe she feels pressured to accept the first offer she gets because it's been a long time. And look, I can understand that. Being a stay-at-home parent is hard. Losing your professional identity is hard. And if someone dangles a meaningful job in front of you after years of feeling stuck, of course you want it. But here's the hard part. The husband isn't saying no because he doesn't want her to work. He's saying no because the logistics don't make sense. They have two kids. He has patients who rely on him. He has a practice that took years to build. He's the director of an MS center. He treats Medicaid patients at a loss because his grandfather had MS and he watched what that disease does to a person. This isn't some corporate job he can transfer. This is his life's work. and she wants him to torch it for a startup that pays a third of his income. And the kids, they're 5 and 8. They don't understand why mommy wants to move. They just know their friends are here, their school is here, their grandparents are here. So no, I don't think he's the bad guy for pushing back. But the story, it doesn't end there. And honestly, it gets even messier. So remember how I said her suggestion gets more complicated? Well, here's where my stomach actually dropped. She comes to him with this idea, and I need you to really listen to this because it's something. She says, okay, what if I take the kids, just me and the kids? We move across the country. You stay here, keep your practice, keep your patience, keep everything. And you just cover the cost of child care and our expenses from where you are. Wait, hold on. Let me read that again because I almost couldn't believe it. She wants to move their 2 young children, ages 5 and 8, across the country without him. She takes a job with frequent travel, meaning she wouldn't even be there consistently. And he stays behind, working his insane hours, paying for a nanny or daycare or whatever so she can. What? Work at a startup that barely pays a third of his salary. And her reasoning. She claims child care and cost of living are cheaper there. Just not cheap enough for her salary to support him being a stay-at-home dad. So she's not even offering a real solution, right? She's just saying, you fund this whole thing from afar. I mean, think about that for a second. He's already covering the mortgage, the utilities, the car payments, the kids' school stuff, the health insurance, everything. And now she wants him to also pay for 2 households, while she lives somewhere else with the children. But here's the part that genuinely made me pause. One of the community comments, and I'm not saying this is definitely what's happening, but they point out something that's hard to ignore. They say, and I'm paraphrasing, if she moves with the kids and then files for divorce, it's possible he would have to give up his practice and move to where she is if he wants to see his children. Let that sink in, because custody laws, they're not simple. Once kids are established in a new school, a new state, a new routine, courts are usually hesitant to uproot them again. So if she moves first, establishes residency, gets the kids enrolled, and then files for divorce, he's suddenly the one at a massive disadvantage. He'd have to either abandon his patients, his practice, his entire career, or accept that he only sees his kids on holidays and summer breaks. And look, I don't know her. I don't know if that's her plan. But the commenter raises a really uncomfortable question. Why would someone who hasn't worked in years suddenly be so desperate for a specific job across the country that she's willing to separate the family, willing to move the kids away from their father, willing to live on a fraction of the household income? The comment goes on to say, and this is the part that got me, she might be getting her ducks in a row prior to asking for a separation. Because if she's the primary caregiver in a different state, she controls the kids' lives. She controls the custody conversation. And he's left holding the bag, paying for everything, while she builds her new life. Now, I'm not saying that's what's happening. There's another comment that offers a much kinder interpretation, that maybe she's just desperate to work again, desperate to have an identity outside of being a mom, and this is the only offer she's gotten. And yeah, I can see that. I can see someone feeling so trapped at home that they grab the first lifeline, even if it's a bad one. But here's the thing. Even if her intentions are totally pure, even if she genuinely thinks this could work, the logistics are insane. She wants to take 2 young kids away from their father, away from their friends, away from their grandparents, for a startup job with no relocation bonus, frequent travel, and poverty-level wages. And she wants him to pay for it. And the husband, he's not even mad. That's what gets me. He's just resigned. He says he has no desire to divorce, but he's a child of divorce himself, raised by his dad. And he says something that stuck with me. His outlook on divorce has always been no point fighting if the person has already checked out. So he's watching his wife check out in real time. And all he can do is draw a boundary. He says, "You're free to go, but I won't sustain 2 households. If you move, all moving costs are on you. I'll cover our shared expenses and the primary residence, and that's it." And honestly, that seems fair, right? But the sad part is, he already suspects she can't afford that. And he suspects the marriage is already over. Okay, so I get why she wants this. And to be fair, I think it's important we understand her side before we judge too hard. She's an engineer, not like a hobby engineer, a real one, but she left consulting because she hated it. And here's the thing she told him: it's very much a boys' club in their local area. Like the kind of environment where you're constantly fighting for respect, getting passed over for projects you did all the legwork for, watching men with less experience get the contracts you earned. And that's actually why she became a stay-at-home mom in the first place. Her choice, he emphasizes that. He didn't push her into it. But after their second kid, she went back to work, and then something happened. She was passed over for a project she'd basically secured herself. And she just quit, stayed home with the kids. So for 5 years, she's been at home. And now this offer comes through her old professor and mentor. Someone who knows her, respects her, believes in her. And it's not consulting work, which she hated. It's actual infrastructure work, meaningful stuff. The kind of engineering that leaves a mark on the world, you know. Bridges, roads, water systems, things that actually help people. I mean, I can see why that would be tempting. After years of feeling invisible, after leaving a toxic field, someone reaches out and says, "Come do work that matters, with people who value you." That's powerful, but here's where it gets complicated locally. She told him that around their area, she wouldn't get meaningful contracts in her field. That's not paranoia, that's experience. She tried. She got burned. And the boys' club thing isn't just an excuse. Engineering, especially certain types of consulting and contracting, can be brutally exclusive. So she sees this offer as her one shot, her way back in. And she's scared that if she says no, there won't be another one. Now, the husband, to his credit, he doesn't just say no and walk away. He actually comes up with an alternative. He suggests she try to create her own firm, locally. Find like-minded people, women and men who share similar experiences, and build the work environment she wishes existed. And he offers to fund it. He says, we can find a means to fund said venture. He's willing to put his money where his mouth is to help her build something of her own. But she's worried she won't be able to break through that barrier of entry. And honestly, that's not an unreasonable fear. Starting a firm from scratch is hard. Doing it as a woman in a male-dominated field is harder. Doing it in a place where you've already been pushed out once, that's terrifying. So I get it. I really do. She's not being crazy or selfish for wanting this job. She's being human. She wants to feel useful again. She wants to use her degree, her brain, her skills. She wants to be something other than mom. And there's nothing wrong with that. The problem isn't her wanting to work. The problem is the collateral damage. Because look at what this move would cost. His entire practice. His patients, many of whom rely on him because no one else will take their Medicaid. His research. His plans to open an infusion center that takes every insurance, even the ones that barely pay. His role as director of an MS center and a neurology residency program. And the kids, their friends, their stability, their school. He even offers a compromise. He says, what if you ask if you can work from home? 3 out of the 4 weeks you're not traveling, you could do that from here. And we take it slow. Look at the housing market. Look at schools. Do the normal stuff people do before moving an entire family across the country. But she wasn't in favor of waiting. They need an answer by October, she said. And that pressure, that ticking clock, it makes people make rushed decisions. And here's the thing that breaks my heart a little. He's not saying no because he doesn't love her. He's saying no because the trade-offs don't work for their family. And she's not hearing that. She's hearing, my husband won't support my career. Both things can be true at the same time. He can support her ambition while also protecting their kids and his patients and a practice he spent years building. And she can be frustrated and desperate and scared of missing her only chance. There's no villain here. There's just two people who want different things and can't find a bridge between them. And that's the sad part. Because from what he's described, he really did try to offer alternatives. He offered to fund her own firm. He offered to wait and plan. He even said she's free to go if she needs to. He won't stop her. But she seems fixated on this one job. This one startup that pays 1/3 of what he makes. And that's what makes this whole thing so frustrating to watch unfold. And this is the sad part. Because after all the back and forth, all the suggestions, all the compromises he tried to offer, he's starting to accept what's probably coming. Look, he's being really honest here. He tells her, "You're free to do what you want. You don't need my permission." But he also draws a very clear line. He says, "I will not be sustaining two households. If she moves, all costs associated with that move are on her. He'll cover their shared expenses and the primary residence, and that's it." And here's a detail that tells you how well he knows her. He says he would probably lower or get off the credit cards too, because he knows she would live off credit if she had to. That's not malice, that's just knowing someone's patterns and protecting yourself. But the resignation in his voice, you can feel it. He says, "I have no desire to divorce." But then he says something that really stuck with me. He's a child of divorce himself, raised by his dad. And his outlook, no point fighting if the person has already checked out. I mean, think about that. He's not going to beg, he's not going to chase her. If she wants to go, he'll let her go. And that's heartbreaking in its own way, right? Because it means he already sees her as checked out. His gut tells him she's going to take the job. And if she does, he says, yes, it will possibly lead to divorce. He's not even pretending otherwise anymore. And here's where his mind goes, which I think says a lot about how he processes things practically. He starts thinking about custody. He says, given how much traveling she'll be doing for this new job, he suspects he would be granted primary custody. And then he says something that shows his character. He wouldn't take child support from her. He has no desire or need for it. Now, let me read you his actual schedule, because I think it matters. Outside of his mandated hospital shifts, he's usually home by 7 p.m. Once the kids are asleep, sometimes he logs back on around midnight to 2 a.m. to catch up on patient messages and update notes. Maybe once a month, he sees a handful of patients on Saturday mornings, 8 to 11, because that's the only time some working parents can come in. That's not absent, that's present, but with a weird schedule because he's a doctor. And the reason he pushes himself this hard, his grandfather had missed watching what his grandfather went through, is a big part of why he does what he does. So when people might criticize him for working late or checking messages at midnight, he's not doing it because he loves work more than his kids. He's doing it because he watched a disease destroy someone he loved, and he's trying to keep that from happening to other families. And the custody piece, he's thought it through. He doesn't see how her being the primary parent would even work with all the travel this new job requires. And long-distance 50-50 custody, that's just not realistic. So in his gut, he knows if she takes this job and moves, the marriage is over. Out of sight, out of mind, he says. But here's the part that got me. He says if it does come to divorce, he won't fight her. She'd get half of what she's entitled to, and he'd probably just buy her out of the house. He doesn't want to sweat the little things. He's been saving for the kids since day one, and he has no desire to request child support. He'd rather limit their interactions and let her use whatever money she has the way she sees fit. That's not anger, that's exhaustion. That's someone who's already grieving something that hasn't even ended yet. And he admits, part of him wonders if he did something wrong, if she just hates it there. But he can't change her timetable, he can't beg her to stay, and he's not going to uproot everything at the cost of his career. It would destroy his professional standing, and for what? A startup that's barely off the ground. A position where, from what he's seen, she'll be lucky to sustain herself, let alone cover anything else. He's not bitter, he's just realistic. And that almost makes it sadder, because you can tell he still loves her. He just knows love isn't always enough when two people want fundamentally different lives. So here's the final piece of the puzzle, and honestly, it's the part that makes all of this hurt more. The job she's considering is with a startup, a small team that won a project by taking a huge cut off their own profits. So her pay isn't just less than half of what he makes. It's actually about a third, if that, a third, for a job that requires moving across the country, relocating 2 young kids, and leaving behind a husband who runs a medical practice that serves patients no one else will treat. He looks at the numbers and says she probably won't even be able to cover her own expenses, let alone contribute to anything else. And yet, she still wants to go. He's convinced now. If she takes this job and moves, the marriage is over. Not because he wants it to be, but because how could it not be? Out of sight, out of mind. That's what he said. But here's the thing that really weighs on him. And I think this is where his heart actually is. His biggest concern isn't himself. It's not even really about her. It's about the kids. He thinks about his children growing up with the message that their mom left, that she chose a job over them, not a stable, long-term career at a company that'll be around in 10 years. A startup, a gamble, a job that, let's be honest, might not even exist in 18 months. And those kids, they're 5 and 8, old enough to understand that mommy moved away, young enough to carry that confusion for a long time. He says, and I'm paraphrasing here, the truly sad part is neither him nor her. It's those kids growing up with the message that their mom chose something else over them. That's heavy. And yet, through all of this, he's not angry. He's not vengeful. He said multiple times if she wants out, he'll respect that. He won't beg. He won't fight. He's a child of divorce himself, raised by his dad, and he learned that you can't force someone to stay. He remembers what his parents told him, and he plans to tell his kids the same thing. Just because two people aren't together anymore doesn't mean either of them loves you any less. It's a beautiful sentiment. But you have to wonder, at 5 and 8, will that be enough? So that's where this story lands. Not with a clean resolution, not with a happy ending. Just a family standing at a crossroads, and one person seems to have already picked a direction. He hopes something changes. He hopes the outcome isn't as grim as it looks, but he's not betting on it. And I think all we can do is hope for those kids, and for him too, honestly, because no one walks away from something like this unscathed. But hey, that was one story. The next one actually has a happier ending. So let's get into that. If you made it this far, you clearly love these deep dives into real messy situations. So I've got a couple more stories linked right here that you might enjoy. And hey, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. That way you won't miss the next one. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you in the next video.